This is a view that I don't think anybody wants to see when you're the one standing on the port side and your ship is leaving the port without you.
Especially when you're looking through a fence.
So our video is going to highlight exactly what happened and why Tom had this view of the ship leaving without him on it. Our cruise ship, the Norwegian Epic, made the news on May 30th, 2025 in Catania, Italy. One of the headlines, there were many, but one of the headlines was passengers stranded for 7 hours. So we're going to share the story of what happened.
What really happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hi, welcome to Out and About with Tom and Sherry. I'm Sherry.
I'm Tom.
And our video today is our story of the emergency that happened on our cruise ship on the Norwegian Epic while we were on a Mediterranean cruise.
And I guess technically it was an emergency, but it really wasn't. It was really more just an adventure. But it was a pretty interesting experience.
Well, there's some emergency component to it. The lady
that fell in the water, that was an emergency.
So,
there was a lot of police and ambulances and
so I'd say it was an emergency.
Port authorities on jet skis.
Yeah.
It was a definite event.
Yeah, it was. So we thought we would tell our story, which is unique because during the emergency that transpired over a period of 7 hours, well, I guess the emergency was over with at the beginning. Yeah. Maybe the emergency went on for about an hour. But the saga of the Catania, Italy incident on the Norwegian Epic lasted a total of about 7 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. So our unique perspective was that I was on the ship and Tom was not on the ship.
I was in Catania.
Yeah.
Walking around. So I got to experience the whole thing from the port's point of view.
And I saw it from the inside as it was happening. So we hope you enjoy the video. We hope you stay with it because there's interesting parts along the way.
Yep.
So we don't want you to miss out on all the excitement of, again, what really happened.
Yep.
And not necessarily what was reported in the news.
And there was a lot of rumors. And we'll clear some of those up.
Yeah.
Like holes in the ship.
Okay, so we'll get started. We arrived approximately 8:30 a.m. in Catania, Italy on May 30th, 2025. It was a really pretty day, as you can see from the video from our balcony.
Harry stayed on the ship, and I walked into town. And I really enjoyed walking past these little boats in the port. I don't know, they just struck me as working class people's boats.
Left the ship about 9:30 or so, and then walked from the terminal into town. And one of his main reasons for going into town was?
I needed deodorant. I had used up my deodorant. I really like this bridge. This bridge ran for quite a distance in Catania, and we'll get to it later in the video, but it caused a little bit of difficulty getting back to the ship. And this is just a street view in Catania, walking up the street away from the port.
And meanwhile, back on the ship, just hanging out at the Catania port, didn't get off the ship today, but we're on the Epic and on deck 15, certainly lounging here, nice view, connected to the internet, check up on a few things. Tom went off the ship, gonna walk around, he's in the search of deodorant. But he's gonna look around, we'll get some photos we can share. So, it's a beautiful day, it's supposed to be, I think, high 70s, low 80s here today. And it's about 10 o'clock a.m. So a nice little resting area here in the shade. Say, nice view. And back in Catania,
I found the deodorant. I always talk about this, but finding things in a foreign country where you don't speak the language is always interesting to me, and I really kind of enjoy it, searching it out in the store. But I just wandered around and finally found the deodorant in a much different packaging than I was used to, but it's the packages with the blue drops on the front. Then this is just another street view in Catania. In a church. I really enjoy looking at old churches and going in old churches, and this was a beautiful one. So a smaller one, but pretty nonetheless. A lot of nice artwork inside. And the organ back up on the wall. Every church has some statues.
and back on the ship, it's about little after 10:30, and there were a lot more passengers were starting to get off, and so wanted to highlight this port area. You just walked right off the ship through that little terminal with the white peaked roofs, and people just walk out the other side. You'd get on your buses to go on your tours if you were doing that, or you could keep walking, as you see a lot of these people doing, to walk into the town of Catania.
It was maybe half a mile from the ship into town on level ground. It was an easy walk.
So I was kind of looking to see what that walk looked like and to see if I could see Tom, but he was already apparently ahead of the game there. But it's just a really nice view from the ship of the area. And if you are going to Catania, again, it's very easy just to walk right off the ship and walk into town.
And there's Mount Etna. Always something neat to look at. And like always, it looks like the top's in a cloud. I think that's because of the steam coming out of Mount Etna. And then erupted within a few days of when we were there.
Yeah, about 2 or 3 days after we were there, it had an eruption there. But again, it's just a nice, looks like a nice Italian-looking city, I suppose.
Yep.
Port City. And over to the right there of the port, if you look, that little outcropping, that's lava rock. So in a prior eruption, long ago, just lava rock there on right at the ocean level. And right above that, that's where the train went. So I don't know if you could have got on the train and gone somewhere from that port or not, but
I'm sure someplace in Catania there's a train station. I never saw it, but
yeah, maybe not right in that area. But I'm including this part of the video because at this point, 10:45 a.m., it is starting to get very windy. You can hear it. You can see it in the water, although you're not seeing waves because you're in a port there. But the wind was picking up, and I was walking around on the deck just getting photos like this. And where these church areas are that you see there, that's really where Tom was, the area you were walking around in.
Yep.
But just a nice vista off the ship of the old buildings and church steeples and domes.
But walking in town, it didn't seem particularly windy just because of the buildings around kind of sheltered you from the wind. So I didn't really suspect anything might happen.
Well, it was very windy on the ship. And as I was walking around, I had been sitting out there and whatnot, and it just progressively was getting windier and windier. Things were really rattling around. So back in Catania,
I loved this elephant fountain. It was, I don't know, I think I like art that makes you laugh or just feel good, and this was one of them. They have fountains all over Italy and where people used to go to get their water, but this is the only one I saw with the elephant on it, and then the elephant had something, a tower coming up out of its back. It was just a real fun statue. In another church, the Basilica Cathedral of St. Agra, Got to take a selfie in front of it. And this looked a lot bigger on the inside than it looked on the outside. So just beautiful work on the floors and the walls. Statues, of course. And the altar there. And another, I think those, I forget what those are called. This was the tomb of Cardinal Giuseppe Benito Dusmet. And it was just interesting. That was his actual body. He had a metal kind of mask over his face. But it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of interesting to look at. I would almost, the term macabre came to mind. And but it made me think of an idea for glass coffins, for viewings at funerals. People could have glass coffins. Remains to be seen.
Interesting idea. And around 11:40, Tom was still walking around in Catania.
And I found, and Catania was neat. I found a farmer's market. I guess I didn't get any pictures up, but I found a little farmer's market and I walked around that. And in these touristy areas of Italy, there's just little small restaurants everywhere.
And it's about this time that our communications on WhatsApp begin.
Yep. We had planned to meet back at the ship at 1 o'clock, I think. And so I'm kind of telling Sherry I'm going to be heading back now. And that's when things got interesting.
So we've included our string of messages to help outline what was happening, both from the ship point of view, where I was, and what was happening at Catania on the port side where Tom was.
And I started working my way back to the ship. Here's where I found the farmer's market and some fountains. And it was just a neat area. And that wall, that bridge in the background that I mentioned earlier, that's the train runs up on top of that bridge. And it just kind of goes a long way through town. And some more of the vendors in the market. And here it got interesting because I was trying to walk back and the sidewalks kind of ran out and there was just roads. And Google Maps is saying go this way. And I literally ran out of road and I ran out of sidewalk and I didn't really want to walk in the road and get hit by a car and then deal with everything that went along with that. So I kind of had to wander around a little bit to find a way to get back to the ship. Underneath that bridge, that train bridge, or some places it was solid or just blocked off under the arches. So navigating was a little bit difficult.
So I, as mentioned, Tom was coming back and was going to meet me at the buffet. So I had already gone up to the buffet. And this is not a photograph of the buffet at the time of the emergency, but this is what the area looks like. And I was seated right next to the windows like this couple in this photograph is. So I'm sitting there. I think I was about halfway through my lunch and it was pretty empty because most everybody was off the ship. So it was pretty quiet in there. There was wait staff kind of standing around, cleaning around the tables. We were saying, hi, how are you? You know, that kind of thing. And then code echo, I hear over the loudspeaker in the buffet. And nobody was running within the first minute or so, but then I saw an officer running through the buffet towards the front of the ship. The buffet's at the front of the ship. And obviously something was wrong. My first impression was that, something had happened to somebody. I didn't know what the code was for someone having a medical emergency, but that's what I thought it was. But very quickly, you felt all the rumblings and everything, that the ship was all of a sudden just shaking and moving. And you're like, what's going on? And nobody seemed too panicked. And the wait staff that was there didn't seem too concerned. And so I was like, well, I really didn't think anything else of it. I figured, well, they're doing something with the engines or something, right? And then so I continue eating my lunch, and I look out the window, and the next thing I see are tugboats coming around the front of the ship over to the side. The water is all churned up, and these tugboats are rushing over to the side of the ship. So clearly something was wrong, and I still did not know yet what it was. And then one of the wait staff walked over, and I said, what is a code echo? And he says, oh, that means there's something wrong with the ship. And so I was like, oh, which kind of made sense then, because like I say, the ship had been making, or the engines had been making all kinds of noise and whatnot. So finally, one of the staff members said that that the ship had come away from the side of the pier in the wind. So just shortly thereafter, I get a text from Tom.
Getting close. We'll transfer to Wi-Fi soon.
With a picture of the ship.
With a picture of the ship, so Sherry could see how close I was.
I text Tom and say, it might be a while. 2 or 3 pier lines broke and the ship started to float away. They are working on it. You can't get on or off. So again, the wait staff didn't seem overly concerned. And I believe one of them said that this has happened before. So again, I really was like, well, it may not be that big of a deal, right? And the tugboats are over on the side still. Why I didn't think to turn on my phone and video all the tugboat activity going along on the side of the ship, I don't know, but I didn't. So I replied to Tom, they called a code echo. I'm sitting at the back of the buffet, lots of engine work, tugboats, etc. Not under control yet. So the ship was moving away from the pier. I could feel that and see that. I wasn't on the pier side. I was on the opposite side. So I said, looks like they're moving forward, meeting the ship, and they are trying to get it back to the pier. Because again, all this engine noise is going on at the same time. You can see the water moving on the other side. We're moving forward and going back in, I think, because I could feel the ship move forward from where we were, and I thought, well, they're going to pull forward and then pull back and get reattached to the pier.
And here's what I see when I get to the dock, and there was people standing behind the fence, and clearly the ship was moving away from the dock, and people were talking about what had happened was the ropes on the ship, the lines on the ship attached to bollards on the dock. And one of the bollards had pulled out of the dock. The bollard flew over and hit the ship. And then because there was now less lines holding the ship against the dock, the other lines broke. And I calculated how much the bollard weighed based on the volume, the estimated volume of the bollard. It was 1,500, maybe 2,000 pounds that launched over and hit the ship. And some people thought made holes in the ship. So that was exciting. But you could see those red bollards along the edge of the dock that one of them broke.
You can also see this tugboat I keep talking about that I could see. I was on the opposite side where that tugboat is. That's what I was seeing from the buffet window, was that tugboat trying to help the ship stay next to the port or the pier, which was not working. And they finally were like, okay, we got to do something else here. But again, can you imagine seeing this sight for people who weren't texting like we were?
Yep.
And you're on the port and your ship is leaving and you're not on it. And you don't know what's happening.
Anyway, so I texted Sherry. I said, copy. I'm at the entrance. People in port shirts said someone fell off. The passengers have been here a bit and said they're moving the ship. And then the ambulance came in and they went inside the terminal and were helping somebody. I couldn't really see what was going on in there. So.
And I replied, oh, I hope no one did, meaning I hope no one fell off the ship. I mean, I can't imagine.
Because the words from the guy at the port said somebody fell overboard, which would be a pretty good fall from deck 15. Then I texted Sherry, rumors are flying out here. Who knows what's true? I think they're definitely moving the ship, which was clear. I could see that from the fence, that the ship was sailing away. And then they're moving some lady into an ambulance from the terminal in a wheelchair. And she was sitting up and smiling and laughing. It was clear that she wasn't seriously injured. So, which was a relief.
Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine. So apparently what happened was, the ramp getting off the ship onto the port. When the ship moved away from the port, the ramp fell in, and she apparently was on it.
She was
right?
on the, yep, she was on the
And
gangway.
she fell in the water, and I believe her husband jumped in after her.
Yeah.
So.
Which would be scary, which would be very scary. Here you are between a dock and a giant cruise ship.
Yeah,
So.
that I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine. But the crew was there, and we had heard that the crew immediately were getting to her, so thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounded like they handled it all very well.
So I reply, wow, yes, they are moving it. The buffet staff are giving me info, although they don't know much. Then the cruise director was on the PA. They aren't giving the details, but just say moving due to high winds. And as I mentioned earlier, the winds had picked up a little before 11 o'clock. And it was pretty windy just before I went into the buffet at about 12:15 or so. So it was really windy. So once, everything started to make sense at this point. And then I said, but an officer was here and confirmed 2 lines broke, maybe 3. It was super windy up here, meeting up on the deck where I was. And then I'm going to get off now meant I was going to get off the Wi-Fi for communicating with Tom.
Because we only had limited Wi-Fi minutes. We didn't have a Wi-Fi plan. So I let Sherry know, worst case, we'll meet at the Doubletree Hilton in Rome. That was the plan B.
That was a week late, yeah.
Yeah.
A week later, right?
Yep.
Okay. After the ship moves, the ship was moved out. I was still at the buffet. And I zoom back in, and this is the port that I'm zooming. You can see the jetty coming out there. That's where we had been. So you can see it was pretty windy with the white caps there. So we were out here for quite a while, but that's coming up. But yeah, I stayed at the buffet I thought we were just going out, getting reoriented and coming back in. But we kept staying out there. And we obviously, from this video, shows we must have been in a very low area because it was just churning up all of this silt and everything. But they were having a real hard time keeping the ship steady because it really was windy.
But one nice thing about the ship being that far from the pier was, I went back into town, but I could look over and see, the ship's still a long ways away. So no need to head back yet. And then I texted Sherry at 1:29. They're advising 3 or 4 hours from the port official who advised going back to town until 5. And so I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'll reevaluate at 4 p.m. And they said the ship was not going to leave the ship would not leave anybody behind, which was good to know. So.
Oh, okay. Staff said they have to replace the ropes that broke. I'll let you know when we're headed back in.
I said, copy. I'm sitting at a coffee shop where I can see the ship. This is a fun adventure. We have a ready supply of food and water, and we're having an adventure. I told Sherry copy on letting me know, so she'd know that I would just wait to hear from her.
Okay. So interesting thing, and I really never heard anybody talking about this. So I'm back at our balcony, and as you can see the smoke, that wind started a lot of fires. I think there were 3 total that I saw.
So I'm back. I'm just kind of wandering around by the railroad tracks, looking through the fence of the ship. I found that sign funny. Kebab, food, porn. I didn't look and see what porn means in Italian. And I love this sculpture. It was just of a book with the author popping out of the book. And just from a symbolic point of view, that was just neat. So. And just more buildings. There's a piazza here and a fountain. And I like motorcycles, and I really like this motorcycle, so I took a picture of it. And this was a hidden little area I found. It was just down through this alley of this old medieval fort. And it was just a neat little quiet area. So I took my picture. And another one just in case. Then I let Sherry know I'm almost to the terminal.
No, the ship isn't moving much, but they are keeping it steady.
That's good. At least you're not suffering discomfort.
Yep, I'll get in line and hopefully get on sooner.
According to the latest rumor I heard, now there's 2 holes in the ship. I think that's where you get on. Because there was a pretty big chunk of steel that hit the ship. I seriously doubted there was holes in this ship, so I was referring to the doors they open that they put the gangplanks through for people to get on and off the ship.
Okay. So, and we will put, there is a video that somebody on the port that was waiting there got of the Ballard coming off and hitting the ship. And we will put the link to that video in the description for this video so you can see it. It makes a crazy sound, and I could see why they thought there might have been a hole in the ship.
Yeah. It did leave a mark on the ship, a big black mark. So, yeah, you could see how people might have thought it was a hole.
Any news on injuries? He said injuries were significant. Sorry, not significant. I was talking about the captain. There was some reference on the captain notices on the ship. Things are fine out here in the ocean. Winds are high, though, at 38 to 40 apparent knots, I think
Apparent
it was.
knots.
Yeah.
Yep.
On the navigation screen on the TV. So I was watching that, and periodically would get updates from the captain or the cruise director.
So if the ship was sitting still, that would mean the actual wind speed.
Okay, because we were sitting still as best they could.
Yep.
So.
Just the lady they held off in the ambulance, her injuries looked minor. Then I got back to the port at 4:25, and there was one. They were keeping people out of the building because the building was just full of people, but there was one porta potty outside that there was a line for. But there was 100 bathrooms in town, so it was really no big deal.
We're still out at sea, and I had our balcony door open. It was nice.
High winds. We haven't headed back to the port yet to pick up everybody, including Tom, that are at the port. The apparent winds that show on the navigational screen on the TV show like 38 to 40. And the captain said he was hoping to head back around 5 to the port to hopefully get everybody back on board as quickly as possible, but the winds are the problem. So it is 10 till 5 and we haven't started heading that way yet, so remains to be seen.
So I was trying to keep Tom updated from the out at sea point of view. The winds were starting to die down at just about 5 o'clock, at now about 30. And then we were, as everybody else, had plans for the evening. And I let Tom know that the Beatles, the Sgt. Pepper show, they had moved it from the small theater, Cavern Club, to the main Epic theater room at 7:30 and 9:30. So as I said, everybody had plans for the evening, so things were really, that wasn't if you had dinner reservations or whatnot. So things were kind of changing depending on what was happening. So
Daniel, the cruise director, just announced 6 o'clock at the earliest. So he said, go back to town for 2 hours. So that's what I did. I walked back into town. No sense in sticking around. I mean, after all, I was in Italy. Might as well walk around Italy instead of sit at the port.
So, but then just a few minutes later, okay, we're heading back. So we got the announcement on the ship that we were starting to come back. So depending on when you get back on board, we could do Manhattan for dining, given that the show was later. So it was actually working out in our favor because we were going to be somewhat pushed for time. So it worked out good. So I said, we're on our way.
Copy that, Roger. Headed back. Then I sang a Johnny Cash song. I see the ship a-comin', sailing toward the bend.
This is what he saw.
I'm a technical guy. I like watching technical stuff and how things work. And so I kind of got a rare glimpse of watching a cruise ship dock from the dock side. So, and here you can see what had been rumored to be the holes in the ship, but were actually where the bollards had hit the ship. And they hit it pretty hard and had a pretty good impact and made a neat sound. And again, those bollards, you can see 2 red bollards on the dock. Those weighed 1,500, 2,000 pounds by my estimation. So it was a non-trivial impact.
Yeah, no, you got to watch that video. Like I said, we'll put the link in there. Hopefully we can find it and put the link in there. But yeah, pretty intense watching that video.
The video's worth watching even just for the sound. It made a really neat sound.
So from my point of view, he was watching the back of the ship. He's on the pier. I'm towards the front of the ship at our balcony. And so we're heading back in. So while he's seeing it pull back in, we're backing up. So I'm watching it from my point of view.
They tossed the lines out for him to catch it. Tossed a small line, and then he caught it with the grappling hook and pulled it up.
This went on for quite a while.
This was a process.
So we left this part of the video in so Tom can explain this vehicle. But you'll see as this video progresses, the guy in this truck was having a time.
The guy in the truck was having a tough time. So they've got the small rope that they toss out because they could pick it up, and then they pull out the big ropes, and the truck is there to pull out the big ropes. But if you think about it, tying a rope to the back of your truck with a cruise ship that had blown away from the dock hours earlier would take a certain amount of guts at best. And I was talking to a guy on the dock, and we agreed that if I was the guy in that truck, I would leave my seatbelt off, I would leave my windows open, and I would probably leave my door unlatched in case the ship moved away from the dock again and pulled my truck into the water. So But he took some time maneuvering, and you could see the loops of the rope hanging out of the ship.
It looked like because he was thinking the ship was going to stop,
Yeah.
is what it looked like, and then the ship just kept moving back. I wonder if this is what they do normally
They're probably
with the
they
truck.
probably have a little better. They always use a truck because I saw on other times they used a truck, and some of them have a special truck just for doing the ropes, and it's got a bollard on the back of the truck. So yeah, this is the normal way they do that, but it took him a while to get lined up. Meanwhile, we're waiting behind the fence and the crowd barricade for them to dock the ship so we could get on board. And I didn't really care. I was enjoying it. I met an interesting guy who was a salesman that sold equipment to mines, including ropes like that. And so we had a conversation about the ropes. He was familiar with those ropes. And he was of the opinion that the nominal breaking strength of that rope was probably about 50,000 pounds tension. So, and then he had a bunch of equations but the nominal strength is 1/3 of the actual breaking strength. So the net result of that conversation was there was a lot of force on that rope that caused it to break. And a lot of force on that bollard that caused it to pop out of the
Pull out of the dock. That I believe the bollard broke in the rear, but the ropes broke in the front of the ship also.
Yep.
Because you'll see here coming up the broken ropes.
Yeah, because once one rope broke, then the force went up on the rest of the ropes, and then they broke, and it just kind of snowballed.
So this is the front of the ship where I am on the balcony, and there's the broken ropes that were lying down there.
Yeah, you can see in the right of the frame, they're all frayed on the ends.
And I remember the staff upstairs in the buffet when we were talking, when the officer said that the ropes had broke, that the wait staff had commented that they were going to have to figure out a way to make some new rope, because they didn't necessarily have all that on the ship, which maybe they do now. But and you'll see that in the video with the ropes as they're putting them on the ballards at the front of the ship. They look like they had to make some replacements.
All the ropes are brand new, and I imagine what happened was they had a lot of rope on spools or somehow stored on the ship, but then they had to put the ends on it, put the loops on the end, and stuff like that.
Yeah, see where the ends got this plastic or whatever on it.
And I love that little rope pulling boat. That's the Toyota Tundra of the water, of the sea.
So which is interesting, when Tom left the ship, I was at the balcony, sitting on our balcony, and I was looking at these ropes on these two ballards, and there was only two of them on there. And I noticed that. I mean, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but it's interesting. We'll see as these videos go forward. They did more than two ropes this time. So what were some of the comments being said by the crowd back there?
A lot of people were just irritated that it had happened. They didn't feel like they had gotten enough information. But, I mean, I've been involved in emergency situations before. I mean, nothing like on a cruise ship, but, other stuff. And you don't have much information. And I really feel like Norwegian was giving the best information they had and being cautious not to give false information and let those rumors run rampant. I thought Norwegian did a really good job under the circumstances.
Well, and as you said, I mean, I can certainly see where people were upset that, their evening plans had changed or whatnot. But I don't know how many people actually went back into town like you did and enjoyed the rest of the time that you had to walk around, or if more people just stayed there and hoping to get back on at any minute, even though, we were still out at sea.
I think about 75% of the people just waited at the pier and grumbled. One guy, I was walking back, and one guy was already planning his class action lawsuit and all that stuff. He was kind of funny to listen to, and I'm like, man, I'm in Italy. This is kind of cool. This is kind of an adventure, and I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? And this part was neat. There's the 2 holes I was referring to in the ship earlier in my somewhat sarcastic comment, but I always kind of wondered how they put the gangplanks out, and this is how they do it. So, and I've got to say that people on board the ship were a whole lot, I guess, more practiced, or they had their act together a whole lot better than the people on the pier, which makes sense because the people on the ship always do this process with that ship, and the people on the pier, every ship is different, and then it was in a different location because bollards had pulled out. So
Yeah, but to get to watch just the coordination of how the logistics of docking a ship and
yeah, which is actually really quite simple. They pull the gangplank out. They have a guy with a forklift hold one end up and then back up and pull it out and then set it down. I did notice getting back on the ship, though, they do have a kind of a crane assembly up in the ceiling that they could put the gangplank out without a forklift if they wanted to.
I bet there were quite a lot of interesting conversations going on
Yep,
in the crowd while all this was going on.
there was. Yeah, people were anxious to get back on the ship. So, and fair and rightly so. They'd had a long day.
There's everybody lined up waiting to be let go. Go.
Stuff was still going on at the front of the ship. So remember I said initially they only had 2 ropes on. So they put rope 1 and 2 on the red ballard, whereas initially there'd been one on the red and one on the blue. But then they put a 3rd way out there, and now here they come with a 4th one. So they were making dang sure that ship wasn't going anywhere. So this was an interesting scenario that was developing here. And we're going to let the sound play, but Tom can comment on it.
It's coming from a crowd, which I have a feeling maybe because they're maybe letting the Haven people in first would be my guess.
Yep.
So there was a lot of booing. I don't know if you could hear that.
Yeah, so what was that going on down there with that?
And that's exactly what happened. So for those of you that have sailed on Norwegian before, the Haven people, they pay more and they get better service.
Suites.
They get suites,
Yeah.
They get nicer suites and better service and a special private area on the ship and a lot of stuff. And they pay more for better service. They've got butlers. But there was always a guy with a sign that said Haven that would take the Haven group out in front of everybody else. And as it got ready to start letting people back on the ship, the guy showed up with the Haven sign and was holding it up for the Haven people. And the crowd was like, oh no, they're not getting on first. We're all getting on first. And it was just kind of an interesting reaction that I was wondering there might be a little bit of mutiny here, and we might be storming the barricades and running off board the ship. But the guy with the Haven sign kind of disappeared at that point.
Kind of figured out it was
Yeah.
him and the 30
Yeah.
people in the Haven against a couple thousand people.
Yeah.
Were the Haven people commenting back to the people booing them?
Oh, they weren't commenting back. that group there was not commenting back.
Get me on board before this group attacks me.
Yep.
But to Tom's point, you pay for an upper level accommodations with priority service and all this and that. But in that circumstance, I may have just may have waived that benefit.
And I think
just to keep the peace.
Yep. But there's Mount Etna in the background. Mount Etna is, I don't know, it's one of those just very dramatic mountains. So one thing I did notice when we did get back on the ship, normally when you get on the cruise ship, they scan your card and they run your stuff through the x-ray machine and make sure you're not smuggling anything on board. And this time they scanned your card and said, go on ahead. And I thought, man, that would have been the perfect time to smuggle a couple handles of whiskey on board. But I don't drink whiskey, so it's kind of a moot point. But yeah, they weren't screening people's belongings. They were like, let's get the people on the ship and get the heck out of here. Which again was a good call.
Yeah. So that was the incident, and so overall, not overly serious. I feel bad for the lady that fell in. I'm glad she was okay though, because that could have been a bad deal.
But she got a good story to tell her friends.
Yeah,
and
she's
family.
got a better story than we do.
Yeah, but yeah, at the end of the day, it was no big deal. It was some unexpected stuff, and yeah, so what?
Yeah. So, the headlines, this one, were the passengers stranded for 7 hours? Maybe somewhat.
I guess
couldn't get on the ship. But I think I had also seen a news thing that said the ship had been evacuated. That didn't happen. So, again, it wasn't an emergency. It wasn't a serious emergency. No one was seriously hurt. Tom got extra time in Catania, Italy.
Yep.
So did some other folks. People's evening plans got changed. But unfortunately, because of the length of time that we were not allowed to return to the port, apparently, according to the Catania Port Authority, they would not let the ship come back sooner. The captain wanted to come back sooner, but they wouldn't let him, according to the information we received from Norwegian in an official letter to our cabin. But unfortunately, unbeknownst to most of the passengers, I would say, the stop in Naples, Italy, that was the next day, ended up being canceled, and notification wasn't given out until like 6:30, 7 o'clock that morning. So people were upset about the lack of notification about that sooner, so that they could cancel their tours if they had private tours that they had scheduled. If you were on Norwegian tour, you didn't have an issue. But there was a lot of upset people about that. We saw it a lot on the Facebook group for the cruise and whatnot. As to when they officially knew that Naples was canceled. Did they know that night? So people were kind of upset about that. But like I said, we did receive an official letter from Norwegian, and to compensate for our inconvenience, we were given a 10%, 10 or 20%, 20%, I think, maybe 10% discount on a future cruise within the next year and a half, I believe it was.
Yep. And some onboard credit.
Yeah, we got it like $100 or something, $50.
$50 each, $100.
Yeah, so $100 onboard credit.
And out of fairness to the conversation, I think the people that were upset that they didn't get notified sooner that Naples was canceled was probably reasonable.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not. Yeah, I agree.
I think Norwegian probably knew sooner than they told people, and it was probably reasonable, but you live and learn.
Yeah. So in doing that, so anyways, we were in our case, this was our second cruise, and so we had already been to Naples and got to see Pompeii. So for us, it wasn't a big deal, but I could certainly understand people being disappointed that they didn't get to go to Naples. Yeah. But stuff like that happens on cruises. Itineraries get changed. That's always the case, but certainly it's disappointing. So I felt bad for them, but obviously not much that could be done about that. So anyways, we hope you enjoyed the video. Got to see why our cruise ship made the news. kind of see some behind the scenes perspectives on the inner workings of the ship. Now you know what a code echo is. So if you hear code echo on the ship, you kind of have an insight as to what may be going on. Well, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video, got a little insight on your cruise. Just be prepared. Things can change. Yep. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
And if you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to hit subscribe. And if you like the video, hit like. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We promise to answer your questions. Or if you got comments, we'd love to hear those as well. Just different thoughts.
All right. Or if you were on the ship, we'd love to hear your story.
Yeah. If you're on the ship, that'd be cool. That'd be cool if somebody who else was on the ship could tell their perspective on this.
I mean, we were fortunate. It wasn't a big deal for us. I'm sure other people had different stories and whatnot, and we're sympathetic to that, and everybody's experience was a little bit different. But for us, it was some added benefit.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Ciao.